We are getting in tonight new video and survivor testimony giving us a clearer picture of what happened and when in the early minutes of that Hamas invasion, specifically at the site of a music festival where nearly 260 people were killed, according to Israeli first responders.
On October 7th, Hamas militants emerged from Gaza, leading to fierce clashes and significant civilian casualties, with over 1,200 Israelis perishing. Israel's military response involved recapturing Hamas-held areas and extensive aerial bombardment of Gaza, dropping over 6,000 bombs in the initial week. This conflict resulted in the deaths of more than 12,000 Palestinians, with strong indications that Israeli forces didn't adequately avoid civilian casualties, focusing more on destruction than precision. According to Action on Armed Violence, an NGO, the average Israeli airstrike now causes 10 civilian deaths, a significant increase from previous campaigns in 2012 and 2021. Israel's strategy shifted from precision to heavy destruction, involving ground troops and encircling Gaza City by late October, transforming it into a war zone. Global calls for ending the hostilities are growing. Many nations have condemned Israel for disproportionate force and potential war crimes, with significant countries, including U.S. allies like Spain and Turkey, joining the criticism. The U.S., however, maintains strong support for Israel. Secretary of State Blinken and President Biden have emphasized Israel's right to defend itself and prevent future Hamas attacks. The U.S. has pledged extensive support to Israel, deploying 2 carrier battle groups in the region and engaging in direct actions like intercepting missiles from Yemen's Houthi rebels. American forces have also conducted reconnaissance in Gaza, marking active U.S. involvement in the conflict. The Biden administration has sought additional funding for Israel and Ukraine, framing both nations as democracies under attack. However, this unequivocal U.S. support for Israel might undermine efforts to garner global backing, especially from the Global South, which perceives a selective application of international rules by the West. This perceived inconsistency damages the credibility of a rules-based international order advocated by the West. The escalation in Gaza has led to increasing international condemnation, with significant U.S. allies like Turkey and South American nations like Colombia and Brazil expressing strong opposition. Turkey has criticized Israeli actions and recalled its ambassador, while Colombia and Brazil have made strong statements against Israel's actions in Gaza. Bolivia has gone further, cutting diplomatic ties and accusing Israel of crimes against humanity. These developments reflect a growing divide in international perspectives on the conflict. Chile criticized Israel's actions in Gaza as collective punishment. The Israeli Foreign Ministry countered, arguing that not supporting Israel's military actions equates to siding with Venezuela, Iran, and Hamas. In the Middle East, key U.S. allies, Saudi Arabia, Egypt, and Jordan, have condemned Israel's actions, including attacks on refugee camps, hospitals, and forced displacement in Gaza, as war crimes. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken is facing diminished influence in the region, with Arab nations increasingly cooperating with Russia and China. Trust in American proposals has waned, and the U.S.'s reputation in the Arab world has significantly declined. The African Union suspended Israel's observer status in February 2023, led by South Africa's strong opposition, which also withdrew its diplomats from Israel. The African Union backed UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres' remarks that the Hamas attack on October 7th was a reaction to Israel's treatment of Palestinians, leading Israel to call for Guterres' resignation. There's growing global disapproval of Israel and U.S. support for it, evident in protests across Western cities. French President Macron and a Spanish minister have openly criticized Israel's actions, with the latter suggesting bringing Israel before the International Criminal Court. In the UN, the U.S. vetoed a ceasefire resolution despite overwhelming global support. This move contrasts sharply with the growing influence of China, as seen at the Third Belt and Road Forum in Beijing, where President Xi Jinping's vision gained significant interest. The Arab world is questioning the so-called rule-based international order, finding Beijing's approach more appealing. Saudi Arabia and Russia, amidst these developments, have agreed to sustain oil production cuts, keeping oil prices high. Meanwhile, relations between Russia and Turkey are strengthening, even as they navigate the Ukraine conflict. Arab countries and Iran are uniting against Israel's actions in Gaza, indicating a shift in global alliances towards China and Russia. The increasing disillusionment with Western foreign policy, particularly in relation to Israel's actions in Gaza, is driving a significant geopolitical shift. Arab nations and other global majorities are distancing themselves from the US-led, rule-based international order and are looking more favorably towards alternative visions presented by China and Russia. The US's consistent vetoes against ceasefire resolutions in the UN regarding the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, despite overwhelming global support for such measures, exemplify this shift. This American stance is not only isolated in the UN, but also contradicts the broader global sentiment. This geopolitical realignment is further evidenced at the Third Belt and Road Forum in Beijing, where China's President Xi Jinping presented a global vision that resonated with many countries. The significant attendance at the forum, including leaders like Russia's President Vladimir Putin and the UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres, underscores the waning influence of the US in global affairs. Furthermore, the Middle East's growing disenchantment with the West is reflected in the strengthening ties between Arab countries and non-Western powers like Russia and China. The cooperation between Saudi Arabia and Russia on oil production, maintaining high oil prices, and the improved relations between Russia and NATO member Turkey, despite the Ukraine conflict, are indicative of this trend. Moreover, the joint stance of Arab countries and Iran in response to Israel's military actions in Gaza highlights a remarkable regional realignment. The Western, particularly US, support for Israel is increasingly viewed as a factor pushing the global majority towards the influence of Eurasian powers. In summary, the current global geopolitical landscape is undergoing a significant transformation. The traditional Western dominance is being challenged, with countries across the world, especially those in the Middle East and Africa, seeking alternatives in the face of perceived Western biases and policies. The growing influence of China and Russia in these regions is a direct consequence of this shift, marking a new era in international relations. Now, if you like this video, check out this next video right here.